Dr. Jane and I have been talking about meditation, mindfulness, and the various transformations it brings in our lives. And we've talked about a lot of these transformations already, about the nature of peacefulness and nonviolence, about how meditation can be used to enhance compassion. We also want to speak today about insight. And in my presentation, I talked a bit about what the mindfulness tradition means by insight and how it's related to this idea of wisdom. Essentially, I defined insight as being the ability to apprehend the inner nature of something, or even simply, very clearly, how it is possible for us to see things as they are. And so, in the mindfulness tradition, we talk frequently about seeing things as they are. I also said that one of the things that prevents us from gaining insight are certain impediments. And this is a very traditional idea. In fact, the metaphor that's often used in the Zen tradition is that the mind is like a mirror. But the problem is that the mirror has accumulated dust. And consequently, because it has dust caked on it, it doesn't reflect things clearly. So that what we see is a skewed reflection rather than a clear reflection. And so the process of meditation in the Zen tradition is understood as polishing the mirror. So you just remove those impediments. So I've talked a bit about how certain impediments like greed or hatred or fear, anger, these sorts of things prevent us from seeing the world as it is, in part because it clouds our minds. These are experiences that bring about distractedness and confusion and restlessness, all the things that keep us from experiencing our lives in the way that we would find conducive to our happiness. So I'm wondering if you have any other insights into how it is that one might gain insight.
So, Mark, you've brought up very good points of how anger, ego are impediments. They're distractions that do not allow us to achieve our potential. Also, we know that if we want to gain insight, we have to begin with this fundamental idea of open-mindedness. We have to understand that the view that we hold, the view that I hold, isn't the absolute truth. Often our egos make us think that we know what is right. However, what we need to realize is that we have to be open-minded. And once we begin this journey of being open-minded, what we gain is insight. We begin to see others' views on a particular situation or a particular person. And all of a sudden, what we realize that the truth is much larger than just my view. You know well the story of the 6 blind men and the elephant. Each one thinks that they have the truth, and yet none of them do. In the same way, if we want to gain insight, we must recognize and realize that the very view that we see the world through is not the complete truth. The practice of meditation and mindfulness, when we're able to see and reflect on our thoughts, allows us to have this deeper perspective of the world, a broader perspective, not an absolutist perspective, which jails us into only one thought. It allows us the freedom to see many perspectives. Mindfulness is so critical to this practice of multiplicity of views. And this is not a new concept, and it's a concept from ancient times, and the sages have talked about this. But even in modern day, what we find that when we have a board of directors for a company and it has diverse people, it makes better decisions. And so diversity brings multiplicity of views.
Your words inspired a thought in me as you were trying to describe open-mindedness. And it occurred to me that perhaps the essence of open-mindedness is the willing to accept the fact that we might be wrong, that we might not have the truth. And that's such a hard thing, particularly for an academic, to admit that perhaps I don't understand, or perhaps I could be wrong. And so it even implies an element of humility that we have to adopt, that being humble about what it is we know, what it is that we understand, can be essential to keeping this open mind.
So, the fundamental process by which we can achieve this level of insight. So, when I talk to people and I try to help them understand that they need to be more forgiving or be more thankful or become more compassionate, we need to, in order to become insightful of these things, we need the capacity and the ability to become more mindful.
Well, the conversation about open-mindedness reminds me of one of my favorite poems by one of my favorite poets, Jalaluddin Rumi, an individual that I am sure many of our viewers have heard of and know about. And if they don't, let me say that Jalaluddin Rumi was a 14th century Sufi mystic in the Islamic tradition, wrote beautiful poetry spontaneously. And one of my favorite poems that he has is called The Guest House, which has been ably translated by Coleman Barks. And I wanted to conclude our conversation about open-mindedness with a little recital, and I just happen to have the poem right here with me. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of all of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. When we return, we'll talk about our next topic, which is spirituality.